All right, it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone on LinkedIn. Welcome back to another session here on the Talent Ally LinkedIn page. This is part three of a series we started 2 weeks ago called Design for Her. And the series is a collaboration between myself at the International Association of Women, my good friend Jessica with Project More Happy, and the Talent Ally team hosting us on their platform. So these conversations are designed to be conversations. If you are live with us and you have questions, comments, anything you want to add to the conversation, throw it in the comments while we're live. I have them pulled up on my screen today. Uh, Always love hearing from you, how this is landing, if you have questions, if you need support. Our topic today is from hired to gone. And we often think about or hear about problems with during the exit interview. And we're going to be talking today about what are some of the signs or symptoms or things we see before the exit interview and what really is breaking down between the moment that offer letter comes in and the moment that we have the exit interview. So, Jessica, I'm going to kick this over to you as we talk about this exit interview problem, because exit interviews are designed to collect information. But I find when you get to that point, they're probably you're probably so burned out that you might not be showing up or answering honestly. Um, what has been your experience with exit interviews, and what do you see with exit interview being at the end of the breakdown?
Yeah, it's such a good question because we use these exit interviews for data collection. But as you said, generally by the time people are at the exit interview, they've checked out, they've moved on. They're no longer invested in your data being accurate, right? I know in when I worked corporate, I can picture my last exit interview and I knew exactly why I was leaving and I said something else and they wrote it off. Well, they wrote it off as something else and I just let them go with it because I was so over how that culture was being run that I just wanted to move on. And I think a lot of women, it's not even it's not a negative thing. It's not that they're trying to be dishonest. It's that women have compartmentalized and checked themselves out of that job already as a protection thing, as a I am not able to contribute here meaningfully. This is not what I wanted it to be. All those data points we need, they've already moved on from them. And
Mhm.
so if you're waiting for the exit interview for that data, you're not getting the right data. And then you cannot solve the problems as to why your women are leaving, why people are leaving, if you don't have the data that's actually true to the reality that's going on.
Right. And I mean, you and I are both data nerds, right? We love the data, and exit interviews could be a great opportunity to collect data, but most likely at that point we've checked out. We're not going to ship. I think for me, when I think back to some exits I've had, at that point, it's like, well, nothing's going to change. So why am I going to waste my energy giving you the data you need to actually make like is it going to matter? And if it's not, then I'm already checked out. I'm already
Right.
done. I'm not gonna open back up and say, let's have this conversation. Let's try to fix it.
That's right. That's right. Well, and it's interesting because there is a lot of I would say probably anecdotal data, but there is a lot around this idea that most new hires know within that first quarter, that first 90 days, whether or not it's a good fit. And a lot of people aren't going to jump right at that 90 days, but they know whether they feel like it's aligned to what they signed up for, like they know whether they feel like they're going to have an impact and be able to contribute. It might take them another year to leave, but their brain has already decided like a quarter into it. And so our brains by default stop collecting the sort of data that could actually matter because our brains are now focused on, okay, what am I going to do next? So we're not even as engaged if we've decided at day 87 and we don't leave until a year later. right? So
Right.
sometimes we don't even know the stories as to why we're leaving at that point because our brain has stopped following it. We decided a long time ago, we've moved on.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's interesting because we talk a lot about grace periods, right? You start a new job, those first 90 days. Typically, we think from an organization standpoint, HR is watching. We're getting onboarded, we're getting trained. Are we happy with that person's performance? But on the flip side of that, that person is also having a very important experience. And if they're not feeling supported or they're not feeling like, hey, this is what I signed. I heard about all these great benefits and all these great things. Like this is such a great place to work. Where's the greatness?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. And from a like surface level, you know, we can see a lot of those big incongruencies. Like if the culture is such a miss from hiring, like that's really easy for us to see and be like, red flag, I'm getting out of here, right? But it can also be like really subtle, those gaps in what the interview process told you and what onboarding tells you. And I'm just going to focus on onboarding because onboarding's those first 90 days and you are getting a lot of data. And it's why when I'm working with companies and organizations, I say, do 30-day check-ins, do 60-day check-ins, do 90-day check-ins so that you can tweak and adapt and meet people where they expected you to be, or you can level set expectations on the other end. But like let's think about the interview process because a lot of times who we're interviewing with aren't the people we're doing the day-to-day with. So if we have a very inclusive interview team, if we have women we relate to who are interviewing us, because HR tends to be more women, so you're engaging more with women, and then you come into a very maybe not as open, not as inclusive environment, your direct manager does not have those same traits, that's a mismatch. That's a mismatch. And that is a signal that goes off and says, this is not what I thought it was going to be, right? That's very
Mhm,
subtle. But that is the
mhm,
difference between interviewing and onboarding. Um, the one I like to say a lot because it's just easy to grasp is if we say you get gym memberships and you get health benefits and you get all of these things, but in the first 90 days, you learn real quick that, yeah, they say you have it, but you're shamed or guilted if you're going to use any of it. That's a really easy red flag to go, they weren't honest in how they
mhm,
set it up.
mhm.
So these
So
are those little gaps
yeah,
that,
it's interesting because the work I do is directly usually with women. It's usually on the employee side where I'm hearing these stories of, oh, it's such a great place to work, but I can't actually use the benefits, right? Or my boss sent me an email at 11 o'clock last night and then texted me at 5 a.m. asking why I hadn't responded, right? Those
yeah,
are
yep,
those are the things that I often see in this overall storyline of from hired to gone. When we look at this from an organizational standpoint,
hmm
what are some of the indicators that companies should be looking at to know, are they onboarding with experience? Like, what are some of those 30, 69 data points we should be collecting or paying attention to? Because she may not be raising her hand and saying, you told me this, but this is my experience,
yeah.
right? She might be like, oh, I'm onboarding. I'm not gonna ruffle feathers or point this out, but it's starting to not feel like what I signed up for. How can organizations really assess that at that beginning start of the job?
Yeah, I do a lot of work with people in this onboarding space too on, we know the org charts and we're really good at giving people org charts, but people don't understand how relationships work for their role specifically. And so it's really important to have those relationship pieces put in place and mapped out for new employees so that those check-ins are more natural. They're more peer-to-peer in what the role and the job actually requires of people. Understanding and being able to see whether someone's engaged and excited versus someone doing all the admin tasks. Onboarding is a lot of admin. We are not hired for the admin of the job. We all understand it as part of the job. But if your first 90 days are paperwork and you're not engaged and you're waiting for the big project to land, like you're going to check out. And
Uh-huh.
so those data points you need to be collecting, my work is around being able to collect data around employee energy, employee engagement, and employee impact. All right. And those are all personal, but they're also team dynamics. And so when we're talking about onboarding, when we're talking about um, office and workplace environments that are designed for people to succeed, onboarding can't be personal. It has to be personal and team. And the data that we're collecting has to be around how engaged and connected we feel to the purpose, to the fabric, to the whole of the organization, so that we understand our piece in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can remember going back to companies I've worked for where there was it wasn't always happy hour, but I'm going to use happy hour as the reference here. But there were opportunities outside of the office to connect with people that were either on your team or not on your team. And the company encouraged like the cross contaminated, not
Yeah.
contamination, cross pollination across departments,
Pollination.
right?
That's right. Yes.
Pollination, not contamination.
We're pollinating here.
We're pollinating. Yeah, it was like they wanted you to get to
Yep.
know people, even if you were never going to work together. What happened is these people became like family. It became like we had relationships inside the office, but also outside the office. And it was helpful from a career perspective because it became, oh, so and so is interested in this. I can introduce her over here. I can introduce her here. Or I'm having a bad day. I just need someone to get coffee with. Um, and so I think when we talk about the onboarding process, fitting in some of those natural points of cross-pollination,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Fitting in.
yeah, and I think that's a really great example, because I've worked at places where that is the culture too. I think the trick with that being part of how we're integrating people is it can't be outside of expected work hours. It
Mhm,
has to be um, organizationally encouraged. It has to be a part of that culture. Like leadership has to say, this is important. And when we say this is important, it has to be reflected on our time, on our calendars. Because when we're saying we want you guys to get to know one another and collaborate and care about how one another are showing up, but we want you to do it during your personal time, you're automatically, like, people are going to say no and not be able to integrate in that way. And the kicker is, most of the women that are going to have to, or most of the employees that are going to have to select out of that, are the women who have additional responsibilities. That, you have childcare, you have parent care, like elder care, you have like other things you have to do. So saying we really value this, but do it outside of office hours, doesn't actually help integrate people into the culture. It's a really good intention, but it has to come um, on the company's time.
mhm, mhm. That is such a fantastic point because it goes to that bright and shiny objects, right? On paper, we host all
Yeah,
these opportunities for our employees to get to know each other, but they're all outside of business hours,
right.
which means it's work or nothing.
That's
And
right.
and if that's the way we've designed it, that is a signal to the employee that we don't value you and your time outside the office. Um, do you see other things like this that quietly go on where employers miss it and it's really the way it's designed, but kind of has that impact, leaving women feeling like, oh, I don't fit in here, or this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah, I think one of the big ones that's really subtle that we miss a lot is a lot of organizations in recruiting, in onboarding, talk about um, flat hierarchies, or they talk about how important collaboration is, or how important cross-pollination is, like, right, between departments. And so we're sold this notion that we are going to be valued in multiple different capacities once we're inside the organization. And then when we get there, we realize that the rooms where all the decisions are made are still very exclusive, and we are not a part of them. And so that goes against the collaboration and the openness and the flat hierarchy that we said. I remember I worked for a company and their name was based on a flat hierarchy. Like they prided themselves on it. But everyone there knew the handful of people that had power and made decisions. That is not a flat hierarchy. So that is a really
Mhm.
quick disconnect. But it's also a very subtle one, and it's subtle even for the person on the receiving end of it. It's subtle for the person. They can feel something's off. We said collaboration. We said everyone has an equal voice. Something feels off here, and I can't put my name on it. Well, it's because the decisions are still made without you weighing in.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's okay because someone has to own decisions, but you can't sell it one way and
And
then
then have it be
expect.
the other.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting because that's a very easy, I feel like that's a very easy thing to sell in an interview. Like we're a flat organization, everyone's involved in the decision-making process. I've also worked and led companies where yes, I fully believe in that and I want that to be the standard, but also at the end of the day, somebody has to make the decision.
That's
And
right.
it's the knowing that my voice matters and that I can have input to something. Um, but if I walk in and suddenly all these nobody's listening, nobody's making space for input into decisions. It's just I'm getting all of the feedback back, but I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't take much to change that expectation on the interview, hiring, onboarding piece. It just
Hmm.
takes a little more honesty around what flat hierarchy actually means in your organization, or around what
Hmm.
collaboration means. It means, yes, we want
Hmm.
all the voices, but there are still people, like there still has to be a decision matrix or decision mapping somehow. Um,
Right. So I have a design question for you because
yeah.
knowing that in many organizations, HR is doing the hiring and some of the onboarding even, but then your manager is the one day to day executing. How can companies design a process that ensures there's like the conversation is consistent throughout and that the employee experience is going to be the same no matter obviously there's going to be individual styles of managers and people throughout the process, but how does a company design for a process that works across the board and is
Yeah.
scalable?
Oh, that's such a great question. Um, it's we think that this is natural and we can do this by default, but the reality is so many of our managers and leaders get promoted because of their skills and expertise, but not necessarily because they know how to be managers or leaders, right? So that is the first big gap that we have to address. Is like this is a skill set that people have to learn to be able to onboard and grow the people on their team effectively, right? And so I think it starts way back. It starts in the interview process, actually, because you have to come to an understanding of expectations on both sides. The organization has to be able to say, here are our expectations for the role. And the potential employee has to be able to say, here are my expectations for the role. Do they match up? If they match up, then we say, okay, organization, for me to be successful in this role, what does that require of me? And the organization needs to go, for you to be successful in this role, what does that require of us? Right? So these are double-sided conversations. And from an organizational perspective, yes, HR needs to be involved because there has to be written procedures, there has to be documents, there has to be that piece of it. But the direct manager, the team leads, have to be the ones with the expectation setting. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have to really build out those plans, those 30, 60, 90-day plans to come back in and keep checking in. Am I, as an employee, meeting the expectations of the organization in my new role? And the organization has to check in with the new employee and say, are we meeting the expectations that you had? And there has to be room to say, if not, what can we do to set one another up for success here? Because a lot of times as a new hire, you go into a system, you say, I can do this job. I know how to do it. I've done it before, right? I have all this experience. Oh, but guess what? The software is different than what I used at my last job. Or guess what? The decision-making matrix is different, or how we present is different. Like these are things you don't know till you're on the ground. And so you have to have those fluid conversations to say success still looks the same, but I need slightly different support now that I'm in it. And those are the conversations we don't have from a design perspective, to really allow people to get set up to succeed in those first 90 days.
Hmm. Hmm. Would you, so if somebody's listening and they're like, okay, I feel like our company struggles with this, right? Obviously, we have I'm trying to find the link. There's a link to a resource that we created that will help with all of this, which I'll pop in the chat soon. And obviously, you can always have a conversation with Jessica to get more one-on-one support on this. Um, what would you say is the first step of looking at this hiring onboarding process? What is the first step, most important step that you think needs to exist?
Yeah, for me, it's always data collection. So it always has to start with an audit of where you are right now. So, what are you promising people in hiring, in onboarding? And can you actually prove that you deliver it? Is that what employees actually think that they're getting, after that 90-day mark? Is it real? Is it true? And if
Hmm.
not, then there's an incongruence there. There's a gap there that needs to be addressed. Where is the employee experience breaking down? Talk to your recent hires. Is this what you expected it to be? Do you feel like you are getting what you signed up for? How can we set you up for success in this role? These are simple they don't have to be an hour-long one-on-one. This is hey, can we chat for 5 minutes? And it's just data collection. So there's no judgment in it. You have to level set that no one's going to get in trouble for what they say here. We want you to succeed. That's what I always lead with. You hired them because they have the skills and expertise that you needed for your organization to succeed. So you know they're a good hire. You already invested in them. So now the closing the gap requires you going, are we actually setting them up to succeed? That's where your data is. And that's where you get the knowledge for how to design better moving forward.
Hmm. Hmm. And you're right. Sometimes I think we overcomplicate it or we try to collect too much hard data instead of just the 5 minute, how are things really going? Is there anything you need to bring to my attention? No
Right.
judgment. I really like when I think about if I bring in somebody really, really good and 2 weeks in, they're sitting here going, I'm really frustrated. This is not what I signed up for. I need to know that because
Yeah.
their skills are so valuable. Obviously, I saw that in the interview process, but if they're already starting to mentally check out, then
Right.
we're going to have a big problem.
And the issue there, and it's what we do time and time again, and that's why this happened. This is such a constant conversation across all organizations. The issue is we see that person who's already checked out and we say, that's a them problem. That's a people
Mhm.
problem. It was a bad fit. That's on them. And so we never actually fix the systems. We never actually design to where these qualified people aren't falling through the system and choosing to walk away.
Mhm.
Because we write it
Mhm.
off as, oh, they were just a bad fit. Well, you hired them, you invested in them, like there was a whole process. So if they're a bad fit, that means your process was broken
Mhm.
because you did all that investment. And so instead of saying, okay, well, we're just going to find a replacement, we'll just wait for them to leave and we'll do the hiring cycle again. Like that's really expensive to keep doing over and over again. So instead of
Mhm.
doing that, take the time to go, where is our system breaking down so that we can design better so that we don't have to keep spending this money hiring and investing and onboarding and all of those things to get someone set up for success. How do we set them up for success to begin with?
Yeah, exactly. Because we all, I mean, we all know, right? The the hiring process is very expensive, very time consuming, and can be disruptive, distracting, all of the things, because it's
Yeah,
not just you, that person, and their role, it's
it's the whole
also
team.
the whole team. And so it is, much more beneficial to keep somebody really good than to keep turning over. And you will be well served to figure out what is the design flaw, where are we going wrong, and then working to put structure in place so that you retain your employees and
Well,
everyone's happy and engaged.
that's right. And well, and I also think we like to run very efficiently as organizations because we think efficiency saves us money. And we just talked about how if the system is broken, it's actually costing us more than if it were working. And so I think it's very important, especially in this series, especially in the design for her, like sometimes efficiency works against certain sets of people that you're bringing on. And so there are different needs, different measures of success. There are different ideas of success based on gender, based on how people's brains work, based on what role you're in. And so we have to, as organizations, we have to, as leaders, understand that there has to be room for nuance within onboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to train our managers and our employees to be able to be okay with nuance in onboarding. It is not a copy and paste situation. And that's where we lose a lot of really good talent is we assume that it is copy and paste. And what we do for one person to set them up for success is going to set the other person up for success too. And that's just not the case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so well said. So as we start to wrap up here, I found that link. I popped it in the comments on LinkedIn. It is a short resource designed to be helpful and efficient, not to be lots of reading and something that you're gonna download and then say, nope, this doesn't work for me. So
That's right.
but also you can always reach out directly to me or Jess on LinkedIn. We are happy to connect and have the Design Sorter series came about because we both are constantly having these conversations, and we thought, oh, let's bring in a wider audience. Let's have more conversations, bring more people into the fold. And we always love having these conversations. So if you're stuck or have questions or need support or guidance, please reach out to either one of us. Just as we start to wrap up here, something that just popped in my head that I think is a great maybe example to share. Have you ever seen an organization catch this in time, right? Have you ever seen them catch it early enough in the process? And what kind of things did they do differently to
Yeah.
shift in real time?
Yeah. I have seen it caught in the process. One, you don't have to catch it if you design for it. So that helps a lot if conversation is just built in. But I think a lot of times when it is caught is because there is a very intuitive leader that sees that someone has checked out and takes the 3 minutes to check in on their people and say, look, like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Look, I see you are struggling. I see you are unhappy. Can you give me some insight into what's going on? When we approach one another as humans in the workplace, like we are humans first, you can change the dynamics of how things are working out. We cannot address a gap if we don't understand the gap. And so the first place that people have to go and where there is success is saying, I see you human to human, right? I see you. You do not look engaged. You looked really uncomfortable in that meeting. What's going on? How can I help you so that we are all successful here? Because that's the goal. Everyone wants to be successful. Everyone does.
Everyone. I
Yeah.
had a college professor do that to me once. I
Mm.
sat through class. It was a relatively small class. And later that evening, I got an email from him that said, I looked really off. Is everything okay? And I thought, oh, and I definitely showed up differently to the next class.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a simple question, but when people feel
People want to
seen
be
and
seen. They
mhm,
want to be
that's
valued. They want to be heard. That's all we
yes,
want. And we want to contribute.
mhm,
Every
exactly.
human, we all want those things. So
We
let's set
do.
each other up for success.
Absolutely. Well, Jessica, as always, thank you. Thank you. I've loved these conversations. We
Me
will be
too.
back next week with the fourth segment in this series. And we are next week, we're actually talking about confidence versus environment. I'm so
Cool.
excited for this one.
Yeah.
So tune in, reach out if we can support you in any way. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we will see you back here again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.